now that we have the software configured, what we're going to do now is we're going to try recording something. Okay? I'm going to use my microphone, and as I talk into the microphone, you don't see anything. What we have to do is we have to tell the software to be able to monitor what's coming into the software. And if we'll look on the top here, we'll see this is where our meters are going to be, and you'll see this little microphone here. By single clicking on that microphone, we turn on the monitor. Now you'll notice as I talk, you see this bar going to the right and then back to the left. The farther right it goes, the louder the signal is. We're allowed to go all the way up to 0. This is just like The Price is Right. You know, you can go, you can guess the amount that it's worth until you go over and then you lose everything. That's what happens with digital recording. You want to keep below the 0 and you don't want to go over. If I go over, watch what happens. Hello. Now you see that red line that stays there? That means that I've gone over. Okay? When that happens, it doesn't sound good. So this is why I prefer that we use a mixer, because controlling the volume with a mixer is as easy as turning the knob. Okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set this up by clicking on those little red bars. By the way, they disappear. I'm going to do a test recording. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to record myself. Okay? To record, it's pretty simple. You move your cursor over to the round red button and you push it. Watch what happens. Immediately you saw this new setup happen, okay? And you see these little squiggly lines. These squiggly lines represent what I'm actually saying. It doesn't have to do with frequency, it has to do with volume. If I talk softly, it gets closer together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I talk loudly, you see it get wider until it goes too wide, and then it goes beyond its point, and we have the red things, and it's going to sound distorted when we listen back to it. So the idea here is to record it. You don't have to be really loud, but make sure you don't go too loud. And if you go too soft, things get kind of weird too. So try and this is kind of a middle of the road thing. You know, don't be too Democrat, don't be too Republican. Be right down the center. Get it so it's around there. Okay. It's not real critical unless you go too loud or go so soft that the things don't even move. But as you see, I'm recording. To stop recording, you press the square yellow button. I've now stopped the recording. Now, if we look at this graph here, we see that as I was talking, it was going from the left to the right. Okay? Time marches from left to right. The end of this is the end of our recording. Now, like most Windows things, we have a bar that we can move things back and forth by just moving this bar back and forth like you do on a Microsoft Word document. I'm going to scroll back to the beginning. Now I'm at the beginning. I could have pressed this button to go to the end, or I could press this to go to the beginning. Much faster, much easier. Okay? Now we're going to play back what I just did. To play back, you press the play button. Immediately you saw this new setup happen, okay? And you see these little squiggly lines, okay? We now have a recording. It's in the computer. It looks cool. The kids will think it looks really cool. And from here, we're able to do amazing things. We can now manipulate this in all sorts of ways. And we're going to start working on how to take what was here and make it into a usable recording, okay? What we're going to do here, by the way, the beauty of this is that it has, like most other programs that you've dealt with, it has a redo and undo button, okay? If you go to edit, you know notice it says undo record. It remembers what we just did, and if you press it, it disappears, and you go, oh, I didn't want to do that. Luckily, there's also a redo button. Pressing that we're back again. Nobody got hurt. Nobody panics. Nobody gets hurt. We're all fine, okay? Notice over here, there's another way of doing that. These buttons, this should be familiar to most of you that have dealt with Excel and with Word and things. This is an undo button. This is a redo button. Very handy. Okay? Let's try doing some music. Now, another way we can get rid of a track of music is by going over to this side over here. You'll notice it's got a bunch of information. It says stereo 44,100 HZ, 16-bit, mute, solo. It's got a bunch of stuff here. Basically what this is, it says it's a stereo file. You can tell it's a stereo file because it's got two sets of lines. This represents the left. This represents the right. Okay, the mute button does exactly what you would expect a mute button to do. It mutes the sound. If you're playing, immediately you saw and you press the mute button, it grays it out and you can't hear it. You press the mute button again. Squiggly lines represent what I'm actually saying. Okay, that's how one way that you can mute. Here we have solo. We'll talk about that later when we get into multitracking. But this gives us a way of increasing or decreasing the volume of this particular recording. By the way, each one of these recordings we refer to in the audio business as a track. And when if I were to record another thing right now, it would create another track. Okay, this allows us to adjust the volume of this track or change. Remember what L and R stand for? Left and right. This allows us to be able to change the sound from the left speaker to more of the left speaker or more of the right speaker. Keep it in the center, puts the sounds equally distributed left and right. Okay, that's our first recording. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to eliminate this. If you notice here, there's a little X. You've probably seen X's like this in some of your other programs. By hitting the X, just like if you were to X a program and close it out, you X this, it closes out this track. It disappears. Okay? Now it's gone unless you undo. All right? So that's one of the ways you can get rid of a track. What we're going to do now is I've got one of Dr. Jim's sequences loaded. I'm going to turn this, because I don't want the microphone to be active, I'm going to turn the microphone off on my mixer. And now I'm going to take, and we're going to listen, we're going to watch for these meters again. I'm going to press this little button here. That sets my monitor back on. Let's see, yep, we're working. And I'm going to press the start button on my computer, on my keyboard, excuse me. And we'll see that this is going. We can't hear it right now because we're not listening to it. But I'm going to turn this up until it's pretty good. Okay? I'm going to stop the sequence again. And now we're going to record one of Dr. Jim's sequences. I press the record button. And now I'm going to press the start button on my sequencer. Notice that it's just dumping it in. We can't hear it right now because we're not monitoring it, and I'll get into monitoring in a little bit. But right now you'll notice that it's playing, and I'm supposing that we can assume that that's actually music that's going on there. I think that's enough. We stop the recording. We're going to go back to the beginning by pressing this return to the beginning button. We're there. And now I'm going to press play. Okay, now we have a recording. Now, if that were one of the child's sequences, you would have done it exactly that same way. You would have built the sequence in the computer, in the keyboard, excuse me, and you would have set it up and got it all just the way you want it. You plug the keyboard in to the mixer. You got in the levels. You start the recording. You press play, and you dump the sequence in, and you have this now. This lovely sequence in the computer. Now, you're thinking, well, what happens if I don't start this thing until, I start recording and we don't start actually making the music for 5-10 seconds? You don't want to listen to a CD that has 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 20 seconds of nothing, right? What this allows us to do is to edit just like we do in a word processor. You can cut and paste sounds just like you can cut and paste in a word processor. We can delete sound just like you delete in a word processor, much the same way. Most of you are familiar with the idea of dragging, where you take your left mouse button and you hold it down and then you scroll your mouse to highlight something. That's what you do in a word processor. We do exactly the same thing in this software. Okay? I'm going to take my cursor and I'm going to press the left mouse button and then I'm going to drag my mouse. Notice it grays this out. What I've done is I've highlighted this to do something. Okay? In a word processor, you could highlight a bunch of words to spell check. You could highlight a bunch of words to get rid of them. You could highlight a bunch of words to cut it in one spot and move it into another. You can do exactly the same thing with audio as you do with a word processor. This is dead space. I don't want it. So what do? That's right. I delete it. I press the delete button. It's gone. You're going, oh, I made the mistake. Sally was saying, hello world, and I wanted to keep that. What do? Go to the undo button, and you're back again. Okay? This is how we trim off the beginnings and the ends of a song. Okay? Now, let's say that we get done, and everyone gets done with the end of their song, and there's a bunch of stuff at the end that we have to get rid of. Okay? Like here, we've got some stuff that doesn't belong. We're going to do exactly the same thing. Press the delete button, and it's gone. Okay? Let's say that you want to, you've got a really, really good take. The kids played really well, but they didn't start real strong. But everything else was so good that you want to keep it. And you don't want them to hear this beginning all goofy. Let's see what we can do with that. I'm going to go all the way to the beginning here, and this is how it starts. It's all right. But let's say that Sally was just wasn't right on, but the whole song sounded good, so we want to fade it in. What we're going to do is we're going to do exactly the same thing we did before. We're going to highlight by holding down the left mouse button and dragging. Then we're going to go to a button here that says Effect. We hit Effect and we get a whole bunch of choices. A lot of these things may be useful to you. A lot may not be. But what I want you to look at right now is a command called Crossfade in. What this does is this allows you to sneak into a piece. What I'm going to do is I'm going to press it. I don't know if you could see, but now it's narrower here and it goes up. And what we did is we just created a fade in. To make it more extreme, we highlight it again, go to Effect, and we do Crossfade in again. This makes it twice as extreme. That's how we can alter the beginning. We can do the same thing to the end. If you, for some reason, have a piece where maybe you're doing solos and you go and you don't really have an ending, we can do the same thing with the end. We can take and drag. Oops. You get the middle, it kind of goofs things up here. I'm going to drag the end. We go to Effect. We go to Crossfade out. Let's do it again. Make it even more extreme. Let me get my... Now when you hear the end, this is what it sounds like. Notice that it faded out. And these things, again, are totally undoable.